What did they do after the election? Oh, of course, it wasn't benighted Kamala Harris's fault or anyone in Democratic leadership. It was the voters' fault. It was Latino men and how sexist they are. And are you guys insane? Do you know how poor a strategy it is to blame the voters?
Welcome back to The Unknowns. Today we have Cenk Uygur. He's kind of a political unicorn. He's progressive, but he's a capitalist. He's a populist. He covers the whole gamut and whole range of politics, and which makes him fascinating. He's also founder and host of the Young Turks. Billions of video views. Cenk, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it, brother. No problem. Hey, that's the first time I've been called a unicorn. Hopefully I get called out in a business context soon. That'll be great.
Yeah, I think is that 1 billion now, or has that been increased to 1 trillion? Who knows? The markers keep changing, but either way, I've been following your career, and I think I'm a big fan of anybody who's in the game and sharing their opinions. How would you define your political audience?
So we're on almost all the platforms, and so the network overall has 27 million subscribers. TYT spectrum of thought goes from far left through independence, right? We haven't invited a lot of right-wing hosts, to be honest. We have tons of right-wing guests, and we have conversations with right-wing. And in fact, lately I've been yelled at by the left for having too many conversations with the right wing. We're in a trippy place in this political realignment, which is we are Bernie left, but there's a second political spectrum these days, and that's populist versus establishment. And there we're extreme populists.
Well, let's define that a little bit. When you say populism, what do you mean?
Yeah, so populism is just policies that serve the average person, and the very, very core of it is anti-corruption. Because the thesis of the populists, whether they're on the left wing or the right wing or anywhere, is that the politicians are controlled by the donors. That thesis is obviously correct, and mainstream media honestly lives in a propaganda-filled bubble where they pretend that it is not correct. And that is why they're among the many reasons why they're losing all of their audience and have already lost all of their credibility. So if you're a populist, you're not serving the donor class, you're not serving the powerful, you're serving the average man. Now, if you get into the specific policies, as I explained, corruption is number one, but anti-war comes in at close number two, which is interesting, and we can go down the line. But the populist positions are not the same as the progressive positions. Progressive positions are on the left. The populist positions are universal.
I've often said that in the Constitution, there is no mention of the Republican or the Democratic Party. These are two parties that have sort of become a duopoly in some ways. Is that why the establishment, it's easy for them, right? It's just sort of like the media. If they have the Republicans and the Democrats, they know what their programming is. They're not thinking beyond that. Is that part and parcel of the issue that we face?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the parties, right? So if you mean the traditional establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans, which are about at least 95% of both parties, then yes, those parties have become not just useless, deeply counterproductive. They're controlled 100% by the donor class, and they're against the American people. And I tip of the hat to my right-wing populist friends who've already overthrown their establishment, and I deeply respect them for that. And so I drive some people on the left crazy by saying that, but brothers and sisters, they're not listening to Mitch McConnell. And I never thought I'd live long enough to see Republican voters say, yeah, screw Mitch McConnell, I got no interest in them. I can go on any right-wing show now and get agreement with me over Mitch McConnell on 80% of the issues, okay? So now we need a revolution. Bernie almost did it on the Democratic side, but he came so close in 2016 and 2020. But in 2028, we have to overthrow the Bidens, the Pelosi's, the establishment of the Democrats. That is a dinosaur, a carcass, and it is corrupt at its core. Well, how did that benighted Democratic leadership do against Trump? You all said Trump was a clown. I did too. And all these terrible, terrible things about Trump. Well, if he's that bad, you clowns lost to him twice. What does that make you?
So obviously we're rolling into the soul of the Democratic Party, right? The discussion around that. Where does it go from here? Where did the Democrats go wrong, and how do they prevent that from happening again?
Well, they went wrong by purely serving donors. And so when I I literally got taken off the air for saying that at MSNBC. So this is not hyperbole. This is not hypothetical. The people up top want to maintain their power. And so what they've constructed in mainstream media is not a news industry, it's a marketing industry. And it's marketing for the people who are already powerful. So as long as mainstream media is influencing Democratic voters in the way that they will keep picking the wrong corporate robots. What do they do after the election? Oh, of course, it wasn't benighted Kamala Harris's fault or anyone in Democratic leadership. It was the voters' fault. It was Latino men and how sexist they are. And are you guys insane? Do you know how poor a strategy it is to blame the voters? Jesus Christ, man. They're so deluded. They cannot see anything but what the donors tell them. So the donors told them to blame the voters, so they're blaming the voters. It's going to make it worse next time. So, and I guarantee you, here's what's going to happen in the next Democratic primary. We're going to have some sort of populist candidate, right? And the other side is going to send an army of corporate robots against us. And they're going to say, no, 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 this is the new and improved corporate robot, Pete Buttigieg. Okay, and they've got a new, they're going to do a reboot of Buttigieg and a reboot of Newsom, and they're going to send him out in flannel shirts, and they're going to have a new populist script that they're reading. Then the Democratic Party's definitely going to lose in 2028, and I don't know what happens after that. But if we get a populist, then we're going to rock this world.
I really like the fact that you have a YouTube video explaining how to say your name. Right? You made it about, 12 years ago, and it's got 60,000 views, but you literally, in a very polite manner, indicate that this name may be difficult to pronounce. And I was like, thank you, because now I know. And I know this is a very, very small thing, but for me, the Democratic Party sometimes feels very like a bunch of correctors. And around Vice President Harris's name, there's all a hubbub of you pronouncing it correctly or not correctly. Do you think that she could have just taken a similar approach that you did? It just felt like that was a really heavy moment and everybody was correcting everybody. And if you didn't say it correctly, you were just a bad person.
Yeah, this gets to a much larger problem, right? Now, and it touches on the second issue within the Democratic Party. So my friends on the far left, and I have friends there, and I have hosts in the TYT network that are there, right? But they're, in my opinion, wrong on some issues that are really hurting us. So when you start talking about giving transgender inmates that are undocumented free surgery, it doesn't really matter what the surgery's for. No, brothers and sisters, the American people have that as their last priority. It's not, and that's not a matter of hate. They're just like, hey, we are in desperate need here. It's, what are you spending the money on? Because I know it isn't us, right? And it's like, actually, I don't like that right-wing populists pick trans people to pick on, because they're actually among the most powerless people in the country. If you want to know who's causing your problems, don't look down, look up, okay? So the donors are the ones that are rigging the rules on their own behalf, right? But when my friends on the far left come out with these extreme policies, it winds up making it seem like the entire left wing and the entire Democratic Party believes that. So the reason I brought that up in this context is because there's now a mindset that I view to be a little bit authoritarian, both in the establishment Democrats and in the far left, of you are not allowed to disagree and you better not offend me, right? And guys, come on. My name is Cenk Uygur, but it's spelled with a C. How the hell is anybody supposed to know that? You can't get offended by that because you're being unfair, unreasonable, and most importantly, you're pushing people away. No one knows that a C is pronounced like a J in Turkish. That is an unbelievably unfair request to have people know that ahead of time, right? And so for Kamala Harris, who cares if they're saying Kamala? And I don't even care if they're doing it maliciously. So you, like you said, maybe you do a video, maybe you say it on a stump speech, right? Hey guys, by the way, it's Kamala Harris. But for all of you saying Kamala, I love you anyway, as long as you're saying it, right? And you know what you should call me? What I hope you'll call me soon? President Harris. Boom. And you're done with it. And you're welcoming people. So right wing's amazing these days, MAGA is, because I say to them, hey, I'm anti-war, anti-corruption, as an example, right? And they're like, welcome in, come on in. They didn't ask me about my 98 other policies, right? They just said, hey, you agree with those two things? Come on in, the water's warm, right? The left, I say to them, hey guys, I think there might be right-wing populists who are not faking it, who are genuine, that they are anti-war and anti-corruption. They're like, that's it, you're a right winger. Get out of the party. Get out of the left. You're not a leftist anymore. And now you're a right winger, and then of course fascist, Nazi, etc. Well, when one party is welcoming in people nonstop and the other party's constantly pushing them out, what do you think happens? The Democratic Party had a massive advantage in this country, a massive one. It looked like the Republicans couldn't win a popular vote if their life depended on it. And now we've handed the popular vote back to them by pushing millions of people out of the party.
For those in the Democratic Party, or just those that are concerned about where Trump's presidency could go, do you, what are your concerns?
I have enormous concerns, and it can go bad in so many ways. So here, this is my favorite quote. I was talking to Dan Holloway. He's more of a right-wing populist. He has a show called Drinking Bros. And Dan put it really well. He said, look, we know Trump's a bull in a china shop, but we hate the china shop so much, we send him in anyway. Right. And he even said, look, I know he's going to break some of the wrong china. OK, but still, we had to send him in because we hate the china shop. OK, and so that's a super powerful analogy. I think that's exactly right. And that's also why I voted against Trump, because there's some really important china in that shop, including the U.S. Constitution, democracy, etc. So what's super important, Charlie, is for us to distinguish what we mean by the American system. Because if you mean the current establishment and the way things are run, then I want a bull to rampage through that china shop, right? But if you mean the American system as in the Constitution, democracy, our republic, our rights, etc., then no, not that china shop. Don't send the bull in there.
Every time you have a second-term president, you have a lame duck president. And you're beginning to see some resurgence, I think, in the Republican Party be like, no, because who's Trump's heir apparent? There really isn't anybody, such a unique personality. So I think you're going to see more pushback. What do you think about that?
Well, I have a little bit different take on it. I think that the Republicans in Congress have two bosses. One is Trump, because if they don't obey Trump, they could lose their job. So they have one boss there. The second boss that almost every Republican politician has is their corporate donors. And those two bosses often conflict. So when Trump says, hey, do this, and their donors go, I don't think so, guys. We order you to do this. That's why right now the entire Republican Party in Congress is malfunctioning. It's a 404 error. They're like, does not compute, don't know which boss to follow. And so that's the heart of the issue for the Republican Party today and for the next 4 years.
You obviously have reached out to Elon Musk on Twitter, I believe, and indicated that you'd be willing to help with cost savings in the Department of Defense.
The Pentagon is one giant pork barrel. OK, so that's where they hide all of the corruption and the pork and et cetera, because the minute you say something about it, the entire establishment, the whole Republican Party, but also the whole Democratic Party, and also the entirety of the mainstream media go, national security, we are going to get us all killed. Give more money, more billions to Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and all those guys. And by the way, there are advertisers. Oh, I didn't know that. They're my contributors to my campaign. Oh, golly gee, I didn't know that. No. It's corruption central at the Pentagon. So and then my far left friends tell me, no, don't do that. You're helping them. I'm like, guys, we wanted to cut the Pentagon for the last 20, 25 years. How about taking yes for an answer? And look, and then they say, well, that means you're going to agree to that with them on everything else. No, it doesn't. Why does it mean that at all? So on the other hand, I've now started to hear right-wing hosts that I respect, but I disagree with, starting to talk about cutting Social Security. What are you guys, nuts? I mean, go for it. You're going to run into a buzzsaw. You'll just hand us the next election. I mean, single-handedly hand it to us. So have at it, Hoss. So if they say, hey, Cenk, would you like to help us in cutting Social Security? My answer is, hell no, I wouldn't. No, I'll fight you tooth and nail on that. Why don't we get things out of the way that we all already agreed to, right? So, like, here's another one, paid family leave. 84% of Americans want it. 3/4 of Republicans want it. It's 12 weeks off for moms after they have a baby. Every time I talk to a right-winger, they're like, oh, I love that, right? That's pro-family. Why don't we do the things we all agree on? And by the way, you know what else that would do? That would make Trump very popular. And that's one thing that Trump loves to be, is to be popular.
Do you have more respect for Trump now that he was laughed at in the first election, laughed at in the second election, 2 assassination attempts. Have you increased your respect for him just as, I don't know, like a fellow person in the political arena?
So this is an old adage, but for a good reason, which is that a person's greatest strength is usually their greatest weakness, right? And so Trump's greatest strength is this perseverance, right? That he wants to win so bad. He hates losing. He hates it, right? And so, he got laughed at and he persevered. He took on 16 other Republicans in the primary, beat them all. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be invincible. He beat her. Loses in 2020, comes back in 2024. Nobody thinks he can win. He wins. As a fellow fighter, it's impossible not to respect that, right? Now, on the other hand, why is it his greatest weakness? Because he lost in 2020 and he just wouldn't let it go. So he did a fake elector plot. He encouraged people to do what they did on January 6th. He said that the Constitution should be terminated because of a massive fraud like this, etc. And that stuff is inexcusable to me. And that's why I voted against him, because that's the core of this country. But what's done is done. The American people weighed in on it. He won this election fair and square. But that instinct he has of being the worst sore loser is deeply problematic and is his biggest weakness. But the converse of that, of fighting like hell to get what you want, I definitely respect that.
Who out there can carry these banners for you, right? Other than yourself. I mean, you ran once, you may run again, but who are you looking at or who are you tracking that, like, those are the type of people who could be the Democratic nominee in the next election?
Among the politicians, I mean, that is thin pickings. I mean, I mentioned the 2 guys that I like, Bernie Sanders in the Senate, Ro Khanna in the House, right? But we need to improve upon that brand because right now it's seen as far left and it never was supposed to be far left. It was supposed to be populist, right? So that's the politicians. But don't think just in terms of politicians, right? Think, okay, how about labor, right? We all are in favor of the average American worker. Well, you got Sean Fain at the UAW that's done some amazing work and fought for the average American. You've got Sean O'Brien at the Teamsters doing the same thing, challenging Amazon as we speak right now. They're doing a strike against Amazon, and he's been bold. He's been strong. He spoke at the RNC, and the Teamsters are now at least half a Republican, but historically they're Democrat, and so they're half their guys are Democrats. It's perfectly bipartisan, nonpartisan group caring about the average American, right? Go into entertainment. Jon Stewart. I've been asking for Jon Stewart to run for like 5 years now. And the Democrats are so funny. They're like, yeah, like a celebrity, like a celebrity could win. I'm like, are you guys blind? Donald Trump is president. Donald Trump is president for the second time, and you're still wondering if a celebrity can win? And the reason they say absurd things like that is because they wanted to be a politician, because the politicians are easier to control. Whereas a guy like Sean O'Brien or Jon Stewart will be very difficult to control.
Interesting. The show's called Unknowns. This is the time, right, Jenk? What's unknown about you?
I don't know that there is now anything unknown about me. I mean, the internet has picked me apart so much that that's a good question, brother. I love philosophy, and I'm not sure that that's very well known. So I love thinking about the meaning of life, and I feel like I've got some answers.
You mentioned philosophy. I have a simple one. You're born, you die. It's how you fill your time. And I just ask people to be consistent. And you, sir, seem to be consistent, right? So thank you for your fight. May not agree with everything you stand for, but I appreciate what you do. So come back sometime.
All right, really appreciate it, Charlie. Great conversation.